Before I start this story, let me just say that I can't believe I can't find any coverage of it on YouTube, so here goes. U.S. military bases around the world employ both U.S. citizens and local teachers at the schools on Army bases. Alexander M. Patch Elementary School, or Patch Elementary, on Patch Barracks near Stutguard, Germany, is no exception. In 2020, one of the teachers who was originally from the U.S. returned home for a visit during summer break. While the teacher was visiting, she went to a friend's house. At the friend's house, she ran into a former student who also just happened to be friends with this particular individual. The teacher and their former student sat and reminisced over memories of the elementary school. During this, the former student dropped a bomb on the former teacher. "I hate Zappey. He used to touch me under my panties at his desk during class. I never said anything because I didn't know it was wrong. But I hate Zappey and I always will for what he did to me." She had been in Zappey's third grade class. In third grade, children are between 8 and 9 years old normally. For reality check, this is a picture of a random group of third graders. That is the age this child was when Zappey was touching her bare genitals in a sexual manner. This resulted in an investigation that would include the military, the FBI, and U.S. federal prosecutors in Georgia, but Zappey is a German citizen. We will get to all of that and more right after my overly obnoxious trigger warning. Roll the intro. Co-workers reported Zappey hugging students and having them sit on his lap. Zappey is currently 57 years old. He worked as a teacher at the elementary school beginning in 2001 when he would have been about 34 years old. In the opening chapter, I mentioned that schools on U.S. military bases hire local teachers, and Zappey was one of them. He's from Stuttgart and is a German citizen. However, a military base in a foreign country is considered to be under the law of the nation who owns the military base, just like embassies. This means that Zappey was under the rule of U.S. law while he was at the school. Since the offenses happened at the school, they happened on U.S. soil. Therefore, Zappey is subject to U.S. law for the purposes of this case, which is why the Department of Army Criminal Investigations Division, or CID, looped in CID Europe Field Office and the FBI. CID Europe and the FBI began the daunting task of tracking down former students and co-workers of Zappey. Remember, this is a military base, and these are service people's children, so finding them is not as easy as it sounds. But they did track down a lot of them. Eventually, they found 4 victims whose statements were used to bring charges against Zappey. Through the investigation, it came to light that other teachers had witnessed portions of Zappey's grooming process. Co-workers reported witnessing Zappey often hugging students and having them sit on his lap. Complaints that were also lodged against Scott Biskey. I'll link his video on the end screen. Teachers also reported witnessing Zappey touch students on their backs and stomachs under their shirts. Some of these concerns had been brought to school officials, who punished Zappey by awarding him Teacher of the Year in 2007. For context, the crime Zappey was charged with happened between 2006 and 2010. A former student claims that Zappey touched her, at the time, 6-year-old genitals under her clothes in 2009. She says that Zappey called her to his desk during class, and that is where the assault happened. The former student stated that she told her parents, and they immediately asked for her to be put into a different class and told the school administrators why. We do not know what school administrators did with this information, but we know they did not do enough. A former co-worker claims that Zappey taught the kids to be touchy-feely. They also claim to have reported Zappey to school administrators on more than one occasion. All 4 victims' statements agree on the details of the attacks. Zappey would call the children to his desk, Once they were at his desk, he would touch their genitals in a sexual manner. To a large extent, it went unreported because the children didn't know it was wrong. Which is why we need fucking sex education in elementary school, for fuck's sake. Let's talk about Zappey's arrest. Many adults get taken in by this type of gaslighting. How can you expect a 6-year-old child not to? The FBI and CID officially began investigating the crimes in March of 2020. Zappey was removed from the classroom immediately but remained on the payroll until 2021. The interviews with his coworkers seemed like they were about two different people. Coworkers reported that Zappey was well liked by his students. Some described him as a friendly, outgoing, and encouraging teacher. They also described how Zappey regularly had students sit on his lap and would touch their backs and stomachs under their clothes. For context, these kids were between 6 and 8 years old. The dichotomous behavior was striking. Two former co-workers stated that they repeatedly reported Zappey's behavior to school administrators because it set off so many red flags. However, to the predator, this is standard grooming behavior and could be equated to a form of gaslighting on the victim as well. Predator builds trust with people they are not victimizing. Look at Laura Karen, who got her victims' parents to trust her so much the children moved in with her. I'll link her video on the end screen too. So, to the parents and the students, they're not victimizing, they appear to be the perfect mentor figure. While the victim might not like what's happening and might even consider reporting it, they also constantly hear how great their abuser is from people they would report it to. Many adults get taken in by this type of gaslighting. How can you expect a 6-year-old child not to? See how it's all part of the grooming process now? Well, the investigators did too. Then the investigators started interviewing former students. They managed to find a total of 6 students who testified to inappropriate touching at Zappey's trial. 2 of them testified to Zappey touching and massaging their bare skin under their shirts on their shoulders, backs, and stomachs. 4 testified to the crimes I've already detailed and I'm not going to detail again. The investigation also included information about Zappey's tenure at Patch Elementary. In 2007, he was awarded Teacher of the Year across all the U.S. military schools in Europe. He taught a multi-level German immersion class with 1st through 3rd grade students. Parents spoke highly of the class that was so popular it had a waiting list. After hearing this information, a federal grand jury in Georgia returned 2 indictments for aggravated sexual abuse of a child committed by a person employed by the armed forces outside the United States, and 4 counts of abusive sexual contact committed by a person employed by the armed forces outside the United States. Now we just needed a way to arrest and extradite Zappey so he could stand trial. He made that really easy for us. All of which she thought inappropriate enough to report. After having been placed on administrative leave due to the investigation in March of 2020, Zappey decided to visit family in the US in the summer of 2021. I mentioned the administrative leave part because it means he had to know the investigation was happening. So this Einstein decided to leave Germany, where he is a citizen and would have to go through a lengthy extradition process before being sent to the United States, and come to the United States of his own volition. Well, federal prosecutors learned of his little excursion and filed a warrant on his cell phone location. A judge granted the warrant and the FBI located him in Georgia. So the FBI arrested him on the outstanding warrant that was currently going through the extradition courts in Germany. The grand jury I mentioned in the last chapter, that was held in October of 2022, and you already know what he was indicted for. Zappey's trial started on January 10th, 2023. That's right, this all went down over a year ago and nobody on YouTube has even talked about it yet. Why? Anyway, back to Zappey. The atmosphere at Patch Barracks and the school was described by witnesses as like family. Teachers and students alike testified that children would often run to Zappey and attack him with hugs. They also spoke about Zappey holding hands, patting heads, and generally touching more than was appropriate. An art teacher testified that a female student once leaped into Zappey's arms and wrapped her legs around him. He took a step before putting her down. This concerned the teacher enough that she reported it to school officials. That same teacher reported witnessing Zappey touching a student's hair and that another student had stood on Zappey's feet while he walked, all of which she thought was inappropriate enough to report. A former student who initially reported in 2020 testified to Zappey's inappropriate fondling of her genitals at his desk. as did another former student whose aunt is a military lawyer and the friend whose house the teacher and former student reunited at in the first chapter. I am redacting their names. They are available in the appeals documents if you're really that curious. Another former student testified that she didn't report initially because she didn't know it was wrong. However, 4 years after the attack, she was watching a video about inappropriate touching at their Roman Catholic church and realized that her memories were of just such an incident. She told her mother, but asked her mother not to tell anyone. The two didn't even tell the girl's father, a JAG lawyer. The first time she told anyone except her mother was when CID contacted her in 2021. All in all, the jury heard 5 days of testimony. They heard from the 6 victims. They heard from experts on delayed reporting and memory. I'm sure they heard a lot more as well. Then they returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. A couple months later, a federal judge sentenced Zappey to life in prison. Let's wrap this video up, shall we? The way we validate that teachers are safe to be around children is by running a background check, and if nothing shows up on the background check, we assume that nothing will show up. This operates on the premise of the best predictor of future behavior being past behavior, which is not always true. Psychological evaluation has advanced to the point where, in some cases, we can actually say whether or not someone is likely to offend before they have offended. Now, let me be clear, I'm not advocating that we lock people up and put them in jail because they might commit a crime. However, I think it is perfectly appropriate to be like, no, we're not going to let you in a room full of children all alone because you're likely to sexually abuse them, which could be determined from a full psychological evaluation that included a sexual orientation screening. Yes, they do exist, and they have for a long time. Don't get on me about HIPAA violations. The professional conducting the examination does not have to give a detailed report on the examination. You simply have to say, yes, they are fit, or no, they are not fit. They don't even have to say why. It could be for mental instability issues, or it could be for sexual predation issues, or it could just be that they have a short temper. What do you think? Let me know in a comment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and as always, super thanks. Channel memberships are super cool. And now, I got a jam, so tag, you are it. That is the age this child was when Zappey was touching her bare genitals in a sexual manager. The teacher promptly reported this to Army criminal investigators. This resulted in an investigation that would include the military, the FBI, and U.S. federal. While the victim might not like what's happening and might even consider reporting, and 4 counts of abusive sexual contact committed by a person employed by the armed forces